Hi, Kieran. Thank you so much for letting me interview you. This is Brittnee from the Remote Collective, and thank you for taking the time to have a talk with me today. I know we're in different parts of the world. I'm personally in London, and I would love to hear where you're actually coming from right now, where you're sitting, what city you're in, and also where do you work?
Yeah, so my name is Kieran Flanagan. I'm a VP of Marketing at HubSpot. I'm actually in our Dublin office today,
Nice.
working out of Dublin.
Cool. Well, I found out about you through one, it's a very small network of people advocating for remote work. And that's because I saw you posting on LinkedIn all the time about just you personally loving remote work and advocating for it. So I guess my first question is why? Why do you love it so much?
Yeah, so I guess let me tell you a personal story about why it matters to me, and then just like my general view on remote work. And then maybe just to clarify before I go into this, when I think about remote work, I think about not just people working from their homes. I think about the growing state of companies that have like people who are in different offices. So they're working remotely from each other, that they're in different offices, or they may be working remote where they're not even based in an office. So it's just really distributed teams.
Sure.
So the reason I love remote work is because I'm based in Dublin, Ireland. And so we have some good opportunities. Like Ireland has grown really fast. We have like good tech culture, good tech community, but you always kind of thought where if you wanted to do a really like amazing global role, you would need to go to San Francisco, Boston, one of the kind of like major hubs within the States. I always wanted to do that for a fast growing tech company. And so I worked for HubSpot, helped to build out the international business. And in 2016, I got asked to go and take on this role where I kind of grow the marketing and growth team for our then very for our kind of freemium business that was in its infancy. So it really hadn't started. It was kind of just a concept that had some traction, but was still very kind of startup mode. And so to do that role, originally they wanted me to go to work to Boston. And so I had something that unforeseen happen in my personal life that meant I could not go and move to Boston at that time. And so in a world where remote work and all of that was not possible, I just wouldn't be able to take that role on.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very fortunate that HubSpot said, hey, do you think you can work, can you do this from Dublin? Do you think you can build a remote team and you can hire people based in the States and based in other places and you can kind of do this remotely? And they give me that opportunity, and it turned out that went really well. There was at that time 6 people in the team, 5 of them were based in the States. I was based in Dublin. And if you fast forward to today, in terms of my team that are about 55 or 60 people, 6 of us are based in Dublin, and the rest are all based in different offices or fully remote.
Nice.
And I just think it's great that people can have the opportunity to kind of fulfill their dreams, do great things for companies, and make real impact, and not have to be in the same 5 cities as everyone else.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also you get a global marketplace, right, as a hiring manager.
Yeah. So the advantage then to me, so that was the great thing that happened to me. But the advantage to HubSpot in doing that is then my ability to hire talent is so much more expanded. So the one thing that being remote, the one upside for me, there is definitely downsides. There was definitely really difficult points in trying to make that role work, and I can talk through those. But the one upside is that, or there was multiple upsides. One of the core upsides was because I was remote, in terms of most of the people I were hiring were not based in Dublin, it didn't really matter to me where anyone was based, right? It wasn't like I had to hire someone that was in the same room as me, because most of the people weren't anyway. And so it enabled me to just hire people that were like across all of these different countries and expanded my talent pool.
Nice. That's amazing. Well, I want to ask about that. So many companies that I'm talking to are in that beginning phase where something not forces, but there's an opportunity where they were like, okay, we want to hire this person, and they can't be in our physical office. So they're in that kind of fumbly through trying to hire someone remote, but they don't really have the systems or the culture, or they don't really know what to do, the expectations of remote work, or all of those things. Did you hit any of those obstacles, or was there something else that came up for you? I'd love to hear.
Yeah, it's a journey. So one of the things that I actually initially found tough, and I think that this is going to be true for most companies who are not remote, but want to start to enable the company to be able to hire remote employees, is that for that first batch of people, it can be rough because everyone is in an office or everyone is in a central place and you are on the Zoom. And interestingly, maybe it made me more empathetic for this, because I was that person, right? Nearly when I got to the team to about 15 people, it was me and one other person in Dublin, and everyone else was based in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is hard, I think, because it's hard to build connection with a team you're managing when you're fully remote and they're all based in the office. You kind of miss out on those water cooler moments and those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of have to figure out how to start to build a kind of culture that doesn't require you to be in the exact same office. And how do you build that into like the way that you have meetings, and how do you build that into the way that you have offsites, and how do you build that into the way that you kind of visit each other and work together for some amount of time during the year. And so there were different inflection points, I think, that we got to in terms of, hey, we ran into some issues. And then as the team kept growing, you would kind of, every certain number of employees or team members that were remote, you would run into a different batch of issues. One of the things that we did that I think worked really well is at some point when I was growing the team and there was like a growing number of people who were remote, dialing into meetings and trying to make impact remotely, we had this thing called remote work week,
Mm-hmm.
where everyone went to work remotely.
Oh, really? Wait, everyone at HubSpot?
No, everyone on my team, everyone on my
team.
teams. Yeah, my different teams. So all of my different teams worked remotely, regardless of if they usually come into the office or not. And the reason I did that was just to help everyone build empathy and what it was like to be a remote employee. And so when someone's on the meeting remotely and they're doing that thing where they're like, and they're trying to get in, like you don't know what that's like unless that's been you, right?
Yeah.
And I think that helped a lot for people to be not just more empathetic, but change their communication style for remote meetings, and then to understand that, like, to make time for catching up before a meeting, just like talking about personal life. Like, how do you actually build a relationship with someone when you're not in the same physical location as them?
I completely agree with that. I mean, I've worked back in 2013, my background's in legal field, and I worked for my law firm remotely from Costa Rica, and they would literally bring the laptop in to the conference room, and no one had ever done anything remote, and I couldn't hear anything anyone was saying.
Right.
But I had to be like really nice about it, because I was like, I don't want them to have me come back into the office. But I love what you're saying, because it's like once someone else has done it, you're like, oh, I know what that's like. Maybe we should do this. And now tech, I think, has caught up a lot more. So it's easier to do these type of things. But if you don't have the empathy and the understanding in the beginning, you're not going to even know to make room for those type of things. So
yeah, and I think the thing I got lucky at was doing it in a company like HubSpot. It's not, I know I'm biased because I'm working in HubSpot, but because culture is such a big part of our brand and people do care about other people, that it was never difficult for people to try to figure out how they could better work with people who were remote, because they wanted to do that. The other thing I think HubSpot are good at is spotting trends, right? So we know that this is a trend whether you like it or not. Like the future of work is going to incorporate a lot more people who are remote, and their tech supports that. Like, there's just so much more better tech now. And so you're better off embracing it and figuring out how you can be a company that both supports people who want to work in office if that's what they want to do, or fully distributed teams. And I think the quicker you can do that, the more beneficial to you as a company it will be.
I agree with that. I think a lot of companies are worried about falling behind in that way, because if you see it and you're not ready for it, then you can be one of the old dinosaurs in a way.
Yeah, I think it will happen quick, because, I've definitely seen it on my teams that over the past even 12 to 16 months, the amount of people that have started to ask to go and work in different locations, like they're making choices of their life for their life, like the way that they want to live their life in different places, either for family or for whatever reasons. And now they know that they have the option to actually still do the job they love, and build that into part of how they want to live their life. And I think that's really cool. It's like, I want to go and move to this location because my family are there or something. Oh, now I have to like give up the job I truly love. And I think it's cool that you don't have to do that. And I think more and more companies who can support that are going to have huge benefits, because at the end of the day, companies are successful because of the people who work in them. And if the people who work in them embrace remote work, then the people who support the companies who support that will just get better talent within their company.
I completely agree. And I love the idea that it doesn't have to be either or, like you're the job you love or the life you need.
Right.
And you can have both.
Right. Exactly.
So tell me more about managing teams, because you manage a lot of your team is remote, or you are the managing remotely. Tell me more about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So most of my team is based. I think maybe there's like 5 or 6 in Dublin, and then like it's different, lots of different teams, and then a lot of them are based in the US office, some in the Berlin office, and then a lot of people who are actually fully remote just work from their home,
Hmm.
and so again, for me, it's been great because I used to be the only one from the team who was remote when I first started in this journey. So I was the person in Dublin, and then everyone I was managing was in the US, and that was kind of bizarre because I would dial into the meetings, and I was like the person on the screen, and it was like it definitely was hard because also this team were new to me. I had taken over a different team, so I was trying to build like a connection and not just be this person who went in and asked about metrics and cared about their personal life, and trying to build some like sort of personal connection with them, and doing that on a screen is really difficult.
Yeah.
And then as it grew, it got so much easier because when I hire someone now, people are like, "Hey, this person wants to be based here. Do you mind?" No, because it doesn't make any difference to me because I'm still going to be the face on the screen. Like because of the type of people we hire, we can hire some amount in Dublin, but actually there's just tends to be a lot of people in the States that we need to hire, or like different bigger cities.
Hmm.
And so it just makes my job slightly easier when I'm going to actually build a team and recruit for roles, because I just have such a wider net to cast. And so I think the investment that we put into like figure out how to manage teams remotely and how
Hmm.
to make teams successfully remotely and make that dynamic work is definitely paying off in terms of the kind of people that we can actually hire.
That's cool. So you're saying about the work from home week for your specific team. Is there any other things that you've learned along the way that you would recommend for other people managing teams that were remote?
Yeah, I think there's a couple. Your meetings matter more than your meetings matter so much more when you are working in remote teams than they do when you are in office. And what I mean by that is like all meetings are important, and you should make sure your meetings are efficient. But
Hmm.
when you're remote, what tends to happen is people spend time with each other on scheduled time slots. So that there's like you get less amount of time to interact with those people, because you don't get, if you had a meeting with someone in office and you had follow-ups, or there were some things that you didn't get from that meeting, you could just grab them at the end, you could grab them at lunch, you could go over to their desk. That's the part you lose in a remote company. And so you have to make sure that your meetings are really efficient, and that means both in terms of the agendas you set, in terms of trying to have some amount of like personal, try to build something into the meeting at the start, which is not just straight into the work. You should
Hmm.
have some amount of like personal. Some of my teams, what they do is they share a fun fact, they share a fun story. One of my teams, they did this really cool thing where they would at the start of a meeting take the laptop and show people around their office, like just
That's
adding
cool.
these quirks to add in some personal elements. And so trying to bring that into your meetings, but trying to make the meetings really efficient is important. I think to get really, really good at being proactive. I think most people who work remote and it works out for them are very proactive. So trying to onboard people, when you're trying to onboard a new person onto your team, like letting them know like here are the people you should reach out to. And also it's part of our culture to always ask questions, to be proactive. That's how you're going to be more successful. People love to be asked questions, and just to make sure that they understand that, so they don't think that they're bothering people. And I think that's important. Then there's just like other things that you can do that again are part of that culture, is like how you can do things where you can just have lunch together, coffee together. I know there's Slack Donut where you can just be paired up with people and have random conversations. And so all of those things work really well. I do think the thing that still is missing in remote, and it just depends how big of a factor it is for people or not, is I still haven't found something that replaced the kind of like weird conversations you'll just have in the kitchen, or I know they're called like the water cooler thing, and it's kind of like a cliche.
Yeah.
It is a thing. That still is a thing. I still think like most things, most of the ways you connect with people when you're working remote is scheduled,
Hmm.
and there's not so much of the natural interaction moments.
I agree with
And
that.
yeah, and I think maybe that will be more solvable in something in a world where there's like VR, and you're all in the same room as avatars.
No, seriously though, because I mean, when I'm looking at the computer right now, my brain is in business mode. It's not necessarily
Right.
like, oh, hey, and
Exactly.
did you get coffee yet? Do you want to, whatever,
Yeah.
for sure. But when you said having coffee and meeting and lunch with people, did you mean virtually?
Yeah, virtually. Yeah, my teams do that.
Okay, hold on. Tell me more. What does that mean?
Yeah, so they'll all grab lunch and then just sit on Zoom and talk.
Oh, that's so cute. I've
Talk.
never heard of anyone doing that.
Yeah, again, it comes back to, again, I know this is kind of blowing the HubSpot trumpet, but the people we hire care a lot about culture. And I think that's instilled in working for HubSpot is customers and culture matter more than anything. And so people really want to connect with other people. It's like just built into the kind of fabric of working within HubSpot is people want to feel that they're doing good work, that they enjoy working with teammates, but for the most part, they also want to feel some sort of connection to the people they're working with and the team they have. And I think that's just humans, right? We want to feel some sort of connection. And so managers are very proactive at setting up those like little cool things. I know that like one of my teams did for, I think it was for the holidays, like around the holidays last year, they did a parcel. They would hand around parcels, and whenever it stopped, they got a parcel of some sort of game. And they included some of them. They all went to someone's house, and 2 of them were based remote, and they included them in that, where they also had the parcels, and someone had the parcel for the person who was remote, so they would stand in for them. And so they were included like in the fun elements as well. And I think that's the cool thing about, you have to try to have people who are willing to go that one extra mile to try to build that part of your culture so it's inclusive of remote. Now, there's different parts of that. If you're a fully remote company and you're all remote and you're all based in different locations, so how you approach that may be slightly differently from a company that has a mix, this kind of hybrid of like people who work in the same place and then people who are fully remote.
I've actually heard that it might be easier to have a fully remote company in that sense, because then everyone's just on board with it versus the half. What do you think?
Yeah, so it's probably easier to start off all remote and grow from there. But I think I think what will come more commonplace is actually a hybrid, because large companies, there's some examples of companies that have grown to be pretty big fully remote, but I don't know that we've got to the point where you can say like, could a Microsoft or these type of big companies be fully remote companies? I think one of the biggest companies that are fully remote is like 1,000 people. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I've actually looking into these numbers to see what is the biggest a company, what's the biggest size a company has got working fully remote. And so it's like, what point does it break? So I think that it's definitely probably easier to be all remote, but I do think the more common version of distributed work teams will actually be some sort of hybrid model, where you'll have companies who have office locations but fully embrace remote work to help scale and to just embrace remote work, because they know that that's kind of the future of work.
I completely agree with that. And I remember specifically a time where I was working for a team and I was based in Thailand and the office was in Malaysia, and our team start, they had scheduled someone to deliver a birthday cake while we were on our team start meeting to my door. And I just didn't know what was going on. I was like, oh, hold on guys, someone's at my door. And I opened the door and they were like, happy birthday. And I had the cake on the little Zoom. It was so cute. And I remember thinking in that moment, like, this is success as like a culture within, the hybrid model. Cared enough to figure out how to mail something to Thailand at the exact same time. And mailing things to Thailand is very hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's a pretty cool thing to do. Yeah, those things matter a lot. I think that making people who work remote feel part of the team and part of the company.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Kieran. Is there any last words you have for any companies or teams that are thinking of going remote? Because I think everything you said here is super valuable.
Yeah, no, I think that I think the one thing there's a couple of things. I think if you are thinking about trying out remote, you're a company with office locations, but this is the right thing to do to help scale, you should definitely think a lot about the infrastructure and to make sure you can support that person before you hire. Like, a lot of the advice you get is like, just go do it and start to embrace it. You don't want to, but you're hiring a real person who's giving you their time and like taking a role with you. You want to make sure that you have the infrastructure in place and the people are bought into doing this so their experience doesn't suck. So you definitely want to jump in with the kind of some amount of infrastructure and some amount of thought gone into it. And the other thing is, like, so one of the things that most companies who haven't implemented remote work, and I think this is more so in Europe than maybe the States and more so in certain countries in Europe, is that I still think there's this mentality, well, I can't see this person, they're probably not working that hard. It gives me like anxiety to hire these people because I can't see them and they're probably slacking off. I just want to let you know that the actual opposite is true for people you hire remote. And this is something I have to work with my team on, is like, they're actually always on, because they have the problem of not being able to separate their work from their work life from their home life, because they're working from home. And so what you think is actually the problem is very, very different. It's actually, you need to work with your team who are remote to make sure that they should take breaks, and they're not on at night when they're getting emails because they can be, and they're not taking Slacks and emails at the weekend because they're in the same location they work from. And so you should, the kind of like thought process that like people who work remote maybe slacking off is not right at all.
I completely agree with that. And that's something I try and help teams so much, is like, you have to give them the trust first. And what they don't realize is they're desperately wanting to hold on to that trust. They love the opportunity to work remote, and they're just like, yeah, they're going above and beyond. And then you're there thinking that maybe they're not even working. And I'm like, there's such a disconnect here.
Yeah. So, there's a great quote. I talked to CEO of Close.com, Staliafi, who, they're a great company, fully remote. And one of the things he said when we talked about remote was, most people who want to go remote work think about, hey, this is going to be a lot of freedom, but freedom is earned through discipline, right? And that most people who are great at remote are very disciplined about the way they spend their time, and actually very disciplined about their work. And if they actually aren't that way, then they're probably not going to work out as a remote employee. And I think that's very true. I think people who work remotely are very disciplined about their time and getting their work done.
Yeah, so we should trust them and let them do their thing.
We should trust them. I think trust is, if you're going to hire someone, then you're hiring because you believe that person is the right employee, then you trust them, and you should make sure you always give them that trust.
For sure. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Kieran. I really appreciate it. And I think this episode is going to be super valuable for everyone. So thanks for taking the time.
Cool. Thanks for having me on, Brittnee. I've enjoyed it.
For sure. Bye.